What would you say is the number one reason why people fail? Not necessarily why they make it, the complete opposite.
Right, lack of brains, lack of effort.
Lack of brains, lack of effort.
Yeah, they don't do the work. They don't learn, when you walk in the room, when you start a business and you start to talk about somebody, you're never in a vacuum with no competition, unless you're just extremely lucky. And if there's going to be competition, that means somebody else knows your business as well as you do when you get started. And if you walk into a competitive environment and they still know more about the business than you do and more about your customers, you're going to lose. But most people don't consider that. They don't do the work. They don't learn more about their industry. They don't know even about their business. And so you've got to put in the effort to know more about your industry than anybody else. And that's the brains part, and that's the effort part as well. Because look, if you're competing with me, you better know what you're doing, otherwise I'm gonna kick your ass, and you're not gonna outwork me. And so, the combination is usually what kills businesses early on more than anything.
One of the great secrets in life to becoming successful, whether it's in a business, whether it's working with someone or for someone or in your own personal life, and I learned this selling encyclopedias door to door in my early 20s, is be prepared in life for a lot of rejection. Because if you're prepared for a lot of rejection, it comes, you don't get turned off, you don't get disappointed, like, well, I'm not gonna do this anymore, no one thinks it's a good idea. It's like, I say selling encyclopedias, knock on 100 doors, they slam them in your face. You must be just as enthusiastic on door number 101 as door number 1. Average encyclopedia salesman lasted 3 days. I was at it for 3.5 years. And the way it worked in those days, it was commission only. So the way it worked is you went for an interview, they told you all you could possibly make off commission only, and we were in training for 3 days. It was a presentation that was scripted. We'd have to memorize the whole thing. Well, when you go out in the field, you remember parts of it. You knock on doors, you're not quite sure of yourself, a lot of doors are closed in your face. But what happens, after a while, you start getting used to it, and you see what you can say or do that'll make it better. Or when you go back the next day with your other salespeople, what you see, what you do, what did I say? So let's say I knock on 100 doors to get into one. Give 10 presentations to sell one book. But then when you get better and better at it, through your experiences and losses along the way, it sharpens you up. Where all of a sudden I got to a point where if I gave 3 presentations, I have no less than 1 order, commission only. But I believed that I could do that. I believed that Colliers was the best set of books because a high school student could read it. It wasn't like a college manual you had to read, and I was doing something good for somebody. So you have to believe that what you're doing is good, it's going to benefit somebody, and you learn as you go. Okay, do I look someone in the eye? See, a lot of people don't know these things. Look someone in the eye. All too often people say, it's hard to look someone in the eye because you feel uncomfortable. Of course you do. They're not on the same wavelength you're on or the same frequency. So what do? How do you overcome that? You learn these things along the way. You look them right between the eyes or at their eyebrows. Looks like you're looking them in the eye. I've been working on a book for a couple of years with some of these tips, and it's not ready yet. Maybe next year it'll be ready. But there's all these things, and of course, smile. Smile's the most wonderful thing God gave us. And you don't smile when you first talk to somebody. You smile before you knock on their door. And if your day sucks, you fake it. Hi, how you doing? So when you smile, everything changes. People change.
Everybody believed they're a genius. So in a bull market, everybody believes they're a genius, and they all say the same phrase. This time it's different.
So funny.
It's such a funny phrase that in the investment world, people make fun of it. They're mocked because it's never different. It's actually the same thing. Bubbles expand, but over time, they mathematically cannot continue. So here we have people making millions of dollars who would otherwise be working in a parking garage, and they are giving stock tips out and telling everybody, you gotta get into this, JDSU, this, all kinds of stuff. So I take my college scholarship money, put it in the market, and I very quickly lose half the money.
Because of the crash?
Yeah,
or
because of the crash. And so what happens is I realize, oh my God, I'm not as smart as I thought. It's not easy to become a millionaire through investing in 2 weeks. And so here is where there was a pivotal moment. One, I could have doubled down and said, I just picked the wrong stock. Let me pick another stock. This is very similar to what you hear with people in the crypto world. Well, my investment, quote, investment dropped 50%, but I gotta do this coin or that coin, etc. What I chose to do is go a different route and say, you know what? I don't think I'm that smart about investing. And I actually want to learn how fundamental basic investing works. So things like low cost, long term, things like reading about John Bogle's philosophy, etc. And I started to learn about it.
You get whacked in the head enough times and you say, I could be wrong. And how do you know I'm right? In my case, the really big case was that in 1980, 81, I had calculated that American banks had lent a lot more money to countries that would not be able to pay the debt back. A lot of money, banking crisis. And that was a very controversial point of view. So, I mean, I'm talking about, wow, a big thing happening. And then, so it got reported, and then Mexico defaulted on its debt in August 1982. And I thought that we're now going to go into an economic crisis because a number of the other countries followed, and that was transpiring in that way. And I started my business in 75, by the way, and at 82, I think we had like 8 people, and we loved each other, and we were doing that thing. But I couldn't have been more wrong. It was the exact bottom in the stock market, so I was very publicly wrong, and even more painfully, had to let go of those people. And I was so broke that I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to help to pay for family bills. I mean, it was painful. But you know, okay, now you got a baseball bat to the head, and to, how many does it take? And then you think, okay, how do I know I'm right? How do I know I'm right? So I was very audacious, you know, going after my goals and whatever my opinion. I didn't want to lose that. But, you know, now you're faced with the choice. You know, like the way I look at it is, I want a great life. How do I have the greatest life? But I can have the risk of being wrong. And then everything changed because I figured it out.
I got left back in school. I never went to college. I didn't know anybody with wealth. I grew up in a community that was riddled with crack, and half of my friends were dead or in jail by the age of 21. I'm short. I don't have no athletic skill. I can't sing and I can't dance really well, and I'm black, and I've been at the barrel of a cop's gun 3 separate times, when my only crime was I had t-shirts in my back trunk and I was reaching for the stars. I've told I'll never be able to do anything in life, and now I'm a motivational speaker, a 5-time author, best-selling author. I've been on a major network for 12 years. I've created a company that has influenced a good portion of the planet, and I've employed thousands of people and been able to change people's lives. You know, the reality is I'm never going to get away from being black, short, and dyslexic. That's just what it is. So let's get past that. I'm not going to get away from the fact that COVID is here. That's just what it is, right? So if I can do it, and this is one of the main reasons that I do write the books and I put things out, because I'm a prime example of simplicity, hard work, and common sense with morals, and being able to embarrass yourself, take affordable steps and learn from them, and you apply that, you can do it. I do know it's hard. And reality is, I've met people that are more successful than me that had it harder than me. People that grew up in countries where they have to drink out of the same water that the animals drink out of. You know, that they've seen tragic things happen on a daily basis, you know? So, you know, it's out there. But we have 2 choices. To sit there and say, woe with me, and just be another one of the statistics, or to sit there and give it our best and learn from people like me to say, if my dumb ass can make it, then you can do it too. I never believed that no matter what job you were doing, were you ever beneath anybody else. You had to be able, in my company, you talk to the boy or the girl in the mailroom the same way that you talk with respect to the CEO. Because somebody's dedicating themselves to you, have no right to say that you are a better man or woman than that person, because that person has family, that person has love, and that person is a person. So I think that is where my leadership mentality has come in from, and as well as how can I have people be entrepreneurs in my company if they're not rewarded for potentially taking small steps and trying to do things outside of the box, as long as it's morally correct with what we're doing, and long as nobody else gets hurt. So I have those. That's just been my way of leadership.
There's people that don't understand the concept of, you know, the difference between profits and cash. You know, oh, your accountant might tell you you're profitable, but your cash is going down. You know, not understanding a breakdown. And when you don't,
You think you need college to learn that?
Yeah, I think you do, right? Because it may not, for some people, look, if you're so self-motivated that you can take an online course in accounting and teach yourself everything, you're way ahead of the game anyways, but most people aren't. And I'm not saying you have to go to Indiana, I'm not saying go to an expensive school. I don't care if you go to a community college and take accounting and spend 99 bucks for the class. Just, spending the money forces you to be more obligated to do it. But accounting, finance, lesser extent marketing, sales if the school offers that. These are all that's the language of business. And so while it's possible to teach yourself these things and while it's possible to hire them, when you're starting your own company, you don't want to have to spend money hiring an accountant, right? You're already probably going to have to hire a lawyer to set up your well, let me take that. If you've gone through all these classes, you probably don't have to hire a lawyer to incorporate, right? You can probably figure out yourself. And so your cost of opening up a business drops, but even more important than all that, that's the blocking and tackling, that's the language of business. The thing I learned at Indiana that was more important than anything else, I learned how to learn. And learning became far more important to me because the one certainty in business is that it's always going to be changing. If you're not always learning, to this minute, if I'm not continuously learning, if I'm not just absorbing as much as I can absorb, someone else is going to kick my ass, right? So you talk about paranoia. The greatest source of your paranoia should be knowledge. If someone else knows more than you do, and if you're not learning, if you don't know how to learn, if you don't have a thirst for learning and acquiring information, you're SOL.
If you worry, you don't have to worry. And if you don't worry, you have to worry. Okay? Because what I mean is, if you're worrying about what can go wrong, chances are you will create the protections against that thing going wrong, and therefore that's good. And if you're not worrying about the things that are going to go wrong, then now probably the things you never expect are going to come and hit you. Okay? And so it sounds counterintuitive. If you worry, you don't have to worry. And if you don't worry, you better worry. But what it means is that process of, okay, go to the thing, go to it, and enjoy it. View these things as puzzles. Your personality will change. You'll enjoy it, okay? Because life is a puzzle. It's a going through the jungle, okay? It's like that.
They're out there trying to take you down, and they're not just going to sit still. And if you're good, really, really good, you're going to inspire them to work even harder, faster, better. And so you have to be, very self-aware of what you're good at and what other people are good at. And, a healthy dose of paranoia makes a big difference. Is very helpful. I can typically tell, right? I can tell, but by their passion. I can tell by their focus. I can tell by their preparation. There's a whole realm of things in any business. Here's the business you're in, and here's 1,000 things that influence whether or not you're going to be successful. And really, to me, through my experience in businesses, I can put myself in his position and say, okay, here are 900 of the 1,000 things he has to be aware of, and then go through and ask. And by how many of those or her issues they've been able to address already, that kind of gives me a sense of how hard they're willing to work. And I can tell by the questions they ask me. So all I have to do is say, okay, what do you want to know? And when they start saying, what should I do?
They ask you.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? And I want them to ask questions, but people like to say, the only stupid questions are the ones you don't ask, and that's not right, right? Because the questions you ask tell whoever more about you than anything else you do. Because in particular, it tells me about your preparation. If you ask me questions about just basic things that you should have known and you should have down to a science, that's going to disqualify you almost more than anything.